the people with the backwards attitude, pointing fingers, and that's a bad excuse for sitting on your ass when you complain. It's two things that you don't want to change.
I'm not going to prove the flat earth today. I'm not going to prove a globe earth. What I am going to prove is that people who believe in the globe are severely brainwashed. And let me explain what I'm talking about. On a flat earth, the horizon is flat, correct? The horizon is flat. It's at eye level of the observer. It's due to perspective, okay? The horizon, or in art, is known as the eye level. It always is at the eye level of the observer. It's where the lines above you and the lines below you will converge, okay? It's about perspective. So the horizon on the flat earth is flat, and it is 360 degrees surrounding the observer. So if you stand and you're looking out, if you're on a boat, say in the middle of the ocean, and you're looking out at the horizon, you're going to see a flat line. And if you start to spin in a circle, you're going to see that flat line surround you 360 degrees. Now on a globe, the higher you go up, the further down you would have to look to see the horizon. Although the horizon would still be flat. It would still be a straight line, and it would still surround you 360 degrees. Because if you're on the ball and you're under the laws of gravity and relativity and all that nonsense, you always feel upright. You always feel like you are on top of the ball. The earth is always beneath you. So the horizon is always an equal distance away from you in all directions. So when you're on a boat and you're surrounded by water entirely, and you're looking out at the horizon, you see a flat line. And as you spin in a circle, you see that flat line surround you 360 degrees. You never look out at a horizon and see a curve in the frame like you would in images you see like these. That's not reality. If you were to look in one direction and the horizon was curved in that fashion, we'll continue the curve. There would be no horizon behind you. There would be no earth behind you. It means you're no longer on top of the ball. There's no gravity or relativity. You no longer feel upright. You've now removed yourself from that ball, and you're looking at it from the side. I hope I'm explaining this right. The horizon on a ball is still flat and still surrounds the observer 360 degrees. The only difference between the flat earth horizon and the ball horizon is that the higher you go on a ball, the further down you have to look to see the horizon. The horizon would constantly fall, but on the flat earth, the horizon remains at eye level, and ironically, in reality, the horizon always remains at eye level. So, what does that tell you? So, when you're debating globetards and they tell you that they could see the curve, or they say, huh, I guess you've never been on an airplane because you could see the curve from an airplane. No, you can't. And if you could see the curve from an airplane window, the way you say you could see the curve, left to right in a frame, that would mean there is no horizon behind you. So when a globetard tells you that they see a curve in the horizon, that's proof that they're brainwashed, because they're claiming they see something that is not there and wouldn't even be there even if the earth was a globe. Think about that. That's proof of their brainwash. What they think they see is the memory of all these images they see on screens, on TV, on computer screens. Mostly images created with wide-angle lenses or fisheye lenses, mostly wide-angle GoPro-style lenses that will bend flat lines that are not in the middle of the frame. The higher in the frame the flat line is, it will curve convex. And the lower in the frame, it will curve concave. That's why on a lot of those high altitude GoPro videos you see the horizon bending all over the place. Concave, convex, flat. It's like a wavy line. So I Googled high altitude GoPro just to get an example to use in my video. I had no idea what I was going to find in this video, but right off the bat, Right in the beginning of this video, you notice that the land beneath their feet is concave. See how it's bending the wrong direction? That's because this land is flat, but it's below the middle of the frame. So the camera lens is bending it that way. If that flat Earth horizon was above the middle of the frame, if they tilted this camera further down, that Earth would look bent the completely other direction. And you're going to see that happen throughout this video because it's a GoPro and because the curvature you're seeing is simply camera lens distortion and nothing else. So let's just watch this video. I had no idea what I was going to show you, so this could have proved me wrong, but it's going to prove me right. See how that horizon, even 3 feet off the ground, this thing is like, what, 100 feet off the ground, maybe more, maybe less, and the Earth is already curved. And it's the same curve you will see when it's 100,000 feet off the ground. Now picture this. If you were on a water tower, and this is what you were looking at, and you were seeing the horizon curved like this, continue the horizon. There's no horizon behind you. So do you understand that even on a globe, you would never observe curvature in this fashion, this left to right in the frame curvature? You would never observe that. That's not how it works. So when you claim you could see the curve from an airplane, not only are you making yourself sound stupid, you're proving that you've been brainwashed since you were a toddler, basically. They put that globe in your face very, very young. Let's continue to watch this video. Okay, so this is the camera that's, oh, see, there's too many quick cuts. It's almost like they're trying to not show you. Oh, there's the horizon bending. Like I said, as it fell in the frame, it bent concave. So now you see the curve because it was up in the frame, and as it was about to fall and bend, oh, there it's bending. They keep cutting it. Quick cuts because they don't want you to see the Earth go concave. It's very clever. They'll only show you the horizon at the top of the frame where it looks curved. Anytime the horizon comes towards the bottom of the frame, they cut the video. Oh, no, wait. Oh, there it is. Oh, wavy line Earth. Wavy line Earth. And malicious intentions to deceive you, too. All these quick cuts, when they had all this footage and yet they cut it like this. Malicious intent to deceive you. Whoa, whoa. Oh, there's the concave Earth again because the horizon fell to the bottom of the frame. Whoa. You're not seeing curvature of the Earth in this video. Whoa! The balloon burst and the Earth became concave as the horizon fell in frame. Isn't that amazing? It's so fucking simple, yet so many globetards can't understand this. I made videos on this years ago. Years ago. I made a video called Flat Earth and the GoPro Deception. And I still have to talk about this nonsense. The fact that globetards claim they see a curve in the horizon is proof they are brainwashed. And if the Earth really was a globe, why would they have to be brainwashed? Think about that.
Line between the press and the government. Your administration continues to make the use of video news releases, which are prepackaged news stories sent to television stations, fully aware that some or many of these stations will air them without any disclaimer that they are produced by the government. Comptroller General of the United States this week said that raises ethical questions. Does it raise ethical questions about the use of government money to produce stories about the government that wind up being aired with no disclosure that they were produced by the government?
There is a Justice Department opinion that says these pieces are within the law so long as they're based upon facts, not advocacy. And I expect our agencies to adhere to that ruling, to that Justice Department opinion. This has been a long-standing practice of the federal government to use these types of videos. Agricultural Department, as I understand, has been using these videos for a long period of time. The Defense Department, other departments have been doing so. It's important that they be based upon the guidelines set out by the Justice Department. Now, I think it'd be helpful if local stations then disclose to their viewers if that's, that this was based upon a factual report and they chose to use it. But evidently in some cases that's not the case. So anyway.
To guarantee that's happening by including that language in the prepackaged report.
Yeah, I don't, look, oh, you mean a disclosure? I'm George W. Bush and I...
Well, some way to make sure it couldn't air without the disclosure that you believe is so vital.
Ken, I mean, there's a procedure that we're going to follow, and the local stations ought to, if there's a deep concern about that, ought to tell their viewers what they're watching.
I'm in show business, yes? Why come to me?
Well, I'll tell you why, Mr. Morse. 54-45, what does that mean?
It's a slogan. It's from the...
Remember the Maine?
Yeah, that's gotta be from...
Tippecanoe and Tyler, too.
No, that's not the...
They're war slogans, Mr. Morse. We remember the slogans, we can't even remember the fucking wars. You know why?
Why?
That's show business. That's why we're here.
I see.
Naked girl, covered in napalm. V for victory. 5 Marines raising the flag. Mount Suribachi. You remember the picture 50 years from now, you'll have forgotten the war.
True.
To go for, smart bomb falling down the chimney, 2,500 missions a day, 100 days. One video of one bomb, Mr. Morse. The American people bought that war. War is show business. That's why we're here.
And what do you do for the president? Why Albania?
Why not?
They gotta know at some point.
Who?
Who? The public.
They gotta know?
Yes.
Stan, get with it.
Who killed Kennedy? I read the first draft of the Warren report. It says he was killed by a drunk driver. You watch the Go For. What do you see day after day? The one smart bomb falling down the chimney. The truth? I was in the building when we shot that shot. We shot it in a studio, Falls Church, Virginia, 1/10 scale model of a building.
Is that true?
How the fuck do we know? You take my point?
Yes. All right. Okay. And you want me to do what?
We want you to produce.
You want me to produce your war?
Not a war. It's a pageant. We need a theme, a song, some visuals. We need, it's a pageant. It's like the Oscars. That's why we came to you.
I never wanted those.
Everyone should have a healthy distrust of the media. One of the most dangerous, unspoken things in existence in the world today is a media controlled by a very small group of corporate entities. Every day, we are constantly lied to and constantly told what to think. And most of us never even realize it. It's become a duty and call to action to wake people up to this reality. Before blindly listening to what's hurled at you, everyone has a personal responsibility to at least know what's going on before handing your mind over to the many forms of media indoctrination. In short, wake up. It becomes a frustrating experience to wake people up from the matrix, so to speak, and constantly overhear people all around still completely misdirected and mired in false narratives. The day after the attack in Paris, for example, almost everyone immediately began talking about how crazy people in the world are today, changing their profiles to French flags and immediately posting support and condolences. And the irony was that no one had a clue about what really happened or why the entire world was made to watch. In addition to that, most people are lazy, distracted by a capitalistic existence, don't know they are brainwashed, and most times don't know what they are doing or why. Your thoughts are not your own, and you're being led by the hand every step of the way. Most people openly and defiantly do not trust their governments. People know better. However, simultaneously, they overtly trust each and everything their government does, says, and presents anyway. Because most people trust corporate news narratives where they get most of their information and never question any of it. Most people are still completely unaware that governments orchestrate and/or stage events all the time. This was always done throughout history and is still maintained today. This is nothing new under the sun. You can't even explain this to sheeple, because you might become the one under attack or ridiculed for trying to tell people the real truth. Unfortunately, we have a world of people who don't understand how the world works. The media is not for information, it's for indoctrination. It's owned and operated by a very small group, and the objective of news media is compromised. It's not about informing you about what's going on in the world. The main function is to carry out agendas and control what you think, how you behave, and what you believe.
Well, I've been a journalist for about 25 years, and I was educated to lie, to betray, and not to tell the truth to the public. And it is not right what my colleagues do and have done in the past, because they are bribed to betray the people, not only in Germany, all over Europe.
I want you to listen to me, because I'm only going to say this once. Never, ever trust the news again.
So this is, I was looking at a bunch of old newspaper articles, and there's this great website called, it's the Library of Congress, and it's called, what's it called? Chronicling America is what it's called. So you can just look up Library of Congress Chronicling America, and they have a little search engine there, right? And so you can go in and type in, and you can get all of these newspaper articles from like the 1800s, 1700s, all the way up till now, right? And they've digitally copied these in, and you can scroll in and read them, and you can search for whatever. So I've been doing some research, and I was researching a bunch of different stuff, and I came across this, and so. This is early heliocentric propaganda is exactly what it is. And I think this newspaper comes from I think I was searching from like 1905 to 1915 or something. So I'm not exactly sure what the year, but early 1900s. So it says, look at this. The sun, a cold sphere, focus of the energy of our solar system, radiant power defined. So, and then listen to what it says below. It says, I have it highlighted there, and it says, we used to think the earth was flat because it appeared so. We used to think that the Earth was the center of the solar system because it appears to be. Right? And so this is a magic trick. This is exactly what we were talking about in the I Am, a Wizard lecture, right? They tell you one thing that is, you experience this world is in the common sense way that you experience it, and that's the world that's given to you. That's the world that you live in. That's the world you experience. That's and then they tell you the exact opposite. So I think one of the examples I gave is, hey, I think I'm on a flat, sturdy, steady, immovable plane. I think this is pretty stationary. Nope, you're spinning. In fact, you're spinning really fucking fast. 1,037.5 miles at the equator. You're spinning like 200-300 miles an hour, like more than the speed of sound. That's how fast you're spinning. But I don't feel like I'm spinning. You are. This is what they do, right? So they're saying here, they're like, hey, we used to think the Earth was flat because it looks flat and it's flat and we measure it to be flat, but it's not. We used to think the Earth was the center of everything. Just because, why? Because, well, the sun and moon and all the stars and all the planets seem to revolve around us, even though that's exactly what we experience every single night. No, you silly fool. No. We're not the center of everything. So this is early propaganda. This is early wizardry. Now, read what it says above that. When Aboriginal man first began to reason from effect to cause, he came to the conclusion that sunshine being hot, the cause of sunshine, the sun itself, must also be hot. And this Aboriginal reasoning has persisted down to our day. But in this, as in other things, the obvious is not true. Look what they're doing there. The obvious is not true. The most commonsensical thing, and by common sense, it's the sense that's common to everyone. We all experience the same thing. But the fucking wizards of the world and these globalists are saying, nope. And look what they're saying. The sun, even, the Aboriginals, they thought, from cause to effect kind of thing. Well, we look up at the sun, it seems pretty warm. I'm feeling the light of the rays of the sun, and it's warming me. It's probably warm, it's probably hot. And science comes along and say, no, it's cold, you fool. We used to think that the sun was hot. They're getting you to think exactly the opposite, right? Oh. So, and this is another perfect example of this is aphelion and perihelion. I'm sure you guys know this, but, during the winter solstice, aphelion and perihelion, helion is, of course, the sun. So it's basically close to the sun and far away from the sun is all that aphelion and perihelion means. So now listen to this. Now, the sun is supposedly roughly about 93 million miles away, right? Now, in perihelion, we're actually roughly about 3 million miles closer to the sun, and perihelion happens in the dead of winter. So perihelion happens on January 3rd, roughly January 3rd, January 4th, something like that. Perihelion happens. So we're in our orbit. We are the closest to the sun that we can possibly be. 3 million miles closer, in fact. And what happens on Earth? It's colder. So we're closer to a big, hot, burning sun, and it's colder. And on aphelion, in July 4th, interesting, July 4th, aphelion, we're 93 million miles away from the sun, so we're the furthest away from the sun, and it's hot. And this is exactly what they're trying to do here. The sun is a cold sphere. Everything that you think you know, we're going to flip it on its head. So that's what they're doing. Mind you that the sun being 3 million miles closer and farther away doesn't change in angular size in our view. That doesn't make much sense, but so that's the kind of crap that they're peddling. More crap here. Hot steaming piles of doo-doo caca. Here we've got, this is an awesome, this actually comes from Neil deGrasse Tyson's Instagram page. Now look at this, okay? So let me play it again here. This is an awesome artistic composite of the Earth and the Milky Way from the moon. Of course, it's an awesome. They had to add that adjective in there. It's an awesome artistic composite, right? Yet again, another image, another illustration, another composite, right? Supposedly, China just landed this rover on the dark side of the moon, and what do they give us? Composites and CGI shit like that, because it's an artist rendering. It's so nuts. I mean, it's 2019. Like I could probably do this live stream in the bathroom of a 7-Eleven in North Platte, Nebraska, and get 4G perfect high def. I could probably film it in 1080 or whatever and live stream it to you guys, and it'd be no problem, right? So we have all this technology to launch and go to Mars and send orbiters out to Mars and satellites out to Pluto, and we're landing on the backside of the moon, but we can't get any high definition footage of it. I mean, if you're still believing this shit, forget flat Earth, forget any of that stuff. Just if you're still believing the garbage that these space organizations are peddling, I feel sorry for you, okay? Because that is what you get to prove that China went to the moon. I mean, give me a break. Give me a break. Look at that. Okay.
In part 1, we looked at the ridiculous amounts of fuel supposedly being pumped into these aircraft, and the possibility that the technology being used is way beyond the level they are telling us. To those who obviously misunderstood part 1, I need to clarify. The airlines claim that fuel constitutes 50% of our ticket cost. I'm not saying that fuel is not being used. What I'm saying is that it's a fraction of what we're being charged for and a minor part of flight technology.
Come on, guys, don't hang around. We alone are responsible for 90% of the thrust.
As stated in part 1, we have the engine manufacturers themselves saying that 90% of the thrust comes from the compressed bypass air and not from the combustion chamber. That's not me saying that. It's the people who design and make these jet engines. So it must be true, right? Yes and no. Let's get into it. To make sense of all this, we have to embrace the idea of the ether. The ether was a totally accepted element in the past. Before Einstein and his wife concocted the widely acclaimed relativity theories, everyone, including all of the scientists, knew the existence of the ether. In one fell swoop, Einstein got rid of the ether and everybody else followed suit. The age-old technologies used in the design of these aircraft and engines also utilize the properties of the ether. That's the bit they're not telling us. To do so would fly in the face of contemporary scientific thinking, and they would be forced to recognize the existence of this hugely important element. I said at the end of part 1 that I would be mentioning our little friends the bumblebees. Well, to do that, I first have to bring you up to speed with Victor and Victor. If you visit Victor Schauberger's Ripley's Believe It or Not page, you will find it sadly lacking in important information. This man was a master at decoding the secrets of nature, a prolific writer and far ahead of his time, yet the mainstream scientists chose to ignore his work and label him a nutcase. Just this fact should throw up a plethora of red flags with people. This man dedicated his whole life to the study of nature, and he came up with some truly fascinating stuff. Levitation, propulsion through the ether, and implosion technology, to name just a few. Let's start with implosion technology to show you that he wasn't just making this stuff up. As you will see in this clip, the gas that she's holding would normally be enough to blow a gaping great hole in her hand, but it doesn't. That's because it implodes rather than explodes. The force goes inwards rather than outwards. Implosion technology.
In 3, 2, 1. You okay?
You could judge by the loudness of the implosion that there was a great deal of energy created. Enough to seriously injure her, but apart from being slightly shaken up, she seems fine. Victor's main body of work was with water, but he postulated and demonstrated that this technology works just as well in other mediums, one of them being air, or the ether. Air is our medium, water is for the fish, but the two are intrinsically locked together because both mediums behave the same way when coerced. I highly recommend watching the links for Victor's work in the show notes. These patterns and properties are used throughout nature, in the environment, in trees and shrubs, in flowers, and in animals. Basically, the whole of nature conforms to these rules, and Victor figured it out. As I showed earlier, Victor confirms that using the vortex idea on an aircraft, it will literally suck its way through the ether rather than thrusting against the air molecules.
Schauberger's central approach here was the principle of matter transformation. The elements of the air, particulate matter and gases are converted in this repulsator. One part escapes through the ring rotator, and the radiation energy, Schauberger talks about synthesis electricity, is emitted through the central axis. The repulsion creates a biological vacuum along the axis in front of it, into which the aeroplane is sucked.
The relatively small amount of fuel on board is used for takeoff, landing, and taxiing. It's also used for the APU. The APU is the auxiliary power unit that's situated at the back end of most commercial aircraft. This is a small jet engine configured as a compressed air generator to feed the main engines at startup and during cruise mode, amongst other functions. I must just add something that I didn't address in part 1. Military aircraft like fighter jets use a lot more fuel than commercial aircraft. They need the extra power and thrust that combustible fuel gives. In cruise mode, a commercial airliner does not need the extra power as its forward motion is sufficient to suck enough air into the engine. Just a little observation here. The engines are designed to sit forward of the wings on pylons. From an engineering standpoint, it would be much easier to place them directly under the wings. As most people think, the jet engine spews out masses of superheated exhaust gas. If this was the case, then why would they put the exhaust directly under the wing where all the supposed fuel is stored? Next time you look at an aircraft, try and find the scorch marks under the wings from all of the super hot gases. You won't find any. The small amount of hot gas being ejected from the combustion chamber is surrounded by cooler, compressed air. Don't you think that these people should be in hospital with nasty burns from the super hot gases? Before we leave Victor number 1, let's look at his vortex principles at work in real time. If you think his principles are just theories, then feast your eyes on this. Like the jet engine, the Garuda San Giovanni route needs a small force to start it, but then impels itself infinitely using the medium around it. In this case, water. Despite the downward force of this water, the route impels itself even vertically, just as the jet engine does through the medium of ether. There is much more to talk about with Victor Schauberger's vortex principles and how the aircraft manufacturers utilize the natural forces of nature to assist flight, but I don't want this video to be too long. Again, check out Victor's work for yourselves and you'll see the connections. Time for Victor number 2. Viktor Grebennikov is lesser known than Schauberger, but his research and experimentation is just as extensive and important. It also derives its reasoning from nature.
It's a man named Grebennikov from Russia. Grebennikov was kind of a non-conventional scientist. He was an entomologist, did a lot of work with bugs, entomology. And his favorite thing was to go out into the steppes of Russia and into the various outer hinterlands and camp out in the summers and study his favorite subject.
This might look like a radio-controlled bee, but it's actually a bee with a little radar transponder on it, which means that we can track this bee as it flies around the field.
And these little guys can carry 90% of their body weight in pollen, so it won't affect the way it flies.
First of all, the bees are flying much faster than predicted, an incredible 30 miles an hour, even when fully laden. The next surprise is where the bees go. They almost always overfly potentially decent food. And once they've found their patch, they then repeatedly shuttle to and from it. And this is the really clever bit. In spite of 30-mile-an-hour crosswinds, whether out or back, they all fly in dead straight lines.
A bumblebee can't fly aerodynamically. Yeah, and he's right. And I said, well, what did bumblebees do? And they said, well, they levitate. And I said, well, how's that? And he says, come on, I'll show you. And he showed me, he wrote a book, incidentally. I don't know if it's still in print. It's in the Library of Congress. The book is called Tomorrow's Energy Need Not Be Fuel. And in that book, he gave reference to what I'm talking about, that that of levitation, that the bumblebee, when he starts to beat his wings, when he starts to flap his wings, there's a little cavity, a hollow cavity next to the larynx inside his system that's hollow. And when he beats his wings, he starts to resonate this energy, and it goes back and forth, just similar to a guitar strumming on one side of the room and hitting the same chord on the other side of the room, or somebody hitting a high C and breaking a crystal. It's the same thing, it's resonance. And he said, what they do, they resonate. And when they resonate, they eventually reach the resonance of the field around them. And he explained it this way to me, that the Earth was, of course, spinning, but it was operating on a frequency of 8.5 hertz per second or so forth. And he says, once this bumblebee hits that resonant frequency of its surroundings, it becomes a free agent. It creates a magnetic bubble around itself, and it can go anywhere it wants. And I said, well, that's not in any of the science books. He said, I know. You probably never see it there either, but that's what happens. They'll discover it someday and bring it out, but it's just we have a conventional way of doing things, and then we have a natural way of doing things, and they're totally different. They're diametrically opposed.
The important point here is the bees. As you've heard, the bumblebee shouldn't really be able to fly. Those wings are way too small to lift that chubby little body off the ground. In fact, it's a bit of a conundrum also for the mainstream scientists. They can travel in perfectly straight lines for long distances without any deviation, even during a howling crosswind. Because of the resonant frequencies produced by the vibration of their wings, they create a bubble in the ether, protecting them from any outside interference. So levitation by sound waves is a real-world effect. Do you want more proof?
That the bug wings themselves were creating an anti-gravity phenomena under certain conditions.
These technologies are known and used in modern-day aircraft manufacture. The vortexes being produced are helping the lift properties of the aircraft. This is why the engines are forward of the wings. If they were underneath the wings, then the vortex wouldn't do its job. It has to flow over and not under the wing. Next time you fly, try to listen to the hum of the engines. It changes pitch when going into and out of cruise mode. Just pure speculation here, but there are large cavities in the wings, which are tested with compressed air and not liquids, by the way, and the engines produce a distinct hum, just like the bees do. So the tale of two victors comes to an end. I highly recommend watching all the video links in the description box, as you will gain a much better understanding of the natural forces at work here. As always, this is just my own musings, and they are by no means definitive, but the scientific evidence and the observable effects definitely backs up the theory. Two highly intelligent gentlemen that have had their research largely ignored by the mainstream scientific community, but the manufacturers are covertly using the technology to fly their planes. As per usual, it's us, the consumer, who's losing out, while these huge companies are reaping the financial benefits. In part 3, we will look closer at the fuel tank explosion suppression techniques using the inert gas nitrogen. Nitrogen doesn't burn, but the question is, how fast does it expand when vaporized? Stay tuned and see you in part 3. Thank you for watching.
People whose perspectives are different from yours are wrong, right? Right?
This is our infant universe.
In a millionth of 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 a second, it went from a size smaller than an atom to bigger than a galaxy. Whoosh.
You can create the entire universe out of nothing.
This is insane, you fool! I'm a fool because I have more faith in the saints that wrote the Bible?
Yeah, because you just read the words of a bunch of guys that you never met, and you just take it on faith that everything they wrote was true.
And what makes you think what your scientists are writing is any more truer than my saints?
Because there are volumes of proven data, numbers, you know, figures. There are fossil records.
Oh, fossil records. Ah! I didn't even think about the fossil records. I guess I'll concede. Oh, wait, one more thing before I do, Mr. Reynolds. Have you seen these fossil records?
Have I Huh?
Have you poured through the data yourself? The numbers, the figures?
Well, no. No.
Oh, interesting. So let me get this straight, Mr. Reynolds. You get your information from a book written by men you've never met. And you take their words as truth, based on a willingness to believe, a desire to accept, a leap of, dare I say it, faith?
Come on. Look, I mean, I don't even know how I'm supposed to respond to that. Like, come on. That's a false equivalency.
Just answer the question, Mr. Reynolds.
Sure. Yeah. Okay.
I rest my case.
We think we walk on solid ground. But dare to travel inside our planet and we'll discover another world. Filled with bizarre creatures that live only underground. We'll see gold form before our eyes. Feel 1,200-degree heat inside a volcano. Discover diamonds buried 240 kilometers down. And giant tornadoes of liquid iron. Until over 6,000 kilometers down at the center of the Earth, we reach its beating heart.
The deepest hole ever drilled is here at Kola in Russia. It extends 7.5 miles down. This drill is so long, it distorts like a piece of elastic. But even the deepest drilled hole is still some 3,955 miles short of the center of the Earth. Barely a pinprick on the surface of our planet.
You don't ask, is the science right? You ask, should we have carbon credits?
Have you ever wondered what the center of the galaxy smells like?
And the center of our galaxy is a smelly place.
There's a gas cloud at the center of our galaxy called Sagittarius B2 that's made up of a compound called ethyl formate.
That's Tanya Harrison. She wants you to smell the galaxy.
Which happens to be what gives rum its scent and raspberries their flavor. We've never been there, so we know what the cloud is made up of based on looking at the light that's coming out of it. And we can use different lines that we see in the light basically to tell us what the chemicals are in the gas cloud.
Tanya then took that chemical and turned it into something you can take with you and even wear.
And then we ended up capturing it in the form of a lip balm, so we could actually pass those out to people.
So why even do this? Why should you care what space tastes or smells like? Well, because space isn't real. Not to you, not really. You can't touch it, you've never been there, and you probably never will. It's about making space relatable, making it something you can interact with, so you get as curious about it as Tanya is.
55 Cancri E. Diamonds are amongst the most precious minerals on Earth, but on the exoplanet 55 Cancri E, it really isn't that precious or rare, as 1/3 of the planet is made from diamonds. If it was formulated into a single gem, it would be larger than Earth. Assuming the principles of economics didn't exist, it would also be worth around $26.9 million at current diamond prices. That's a 1 with 30 zeros behind it. Amongst the super-Earth category of planets, this one is a rather interesting entry, seeing as its mass is predominantly comprised of carbon, which would explain why diamonds exist on this planet. As you may know, diamonds are formed when carbon is introduced to crystalline materials under intense heat pressure. And with a planetary average temperature of 1726 degrees Celsius, it's no surprise why diamonds make up 1/3 of the planet. As it's mostly made up of diamonds, it's truly a sight to behold, as the diamonds give the planet a luminescent blue glow that will surely grab your attention.
Scientists don't know anything about anything.
40 years ago, two Voyagers began their odyssey into space. After 37 years of inactivity, NASA engineers have managed to fire up the backup thrusters of Voyager 1, humanity's farthest and longest-lived spacecraft.
I think none of us knew when we launched 40 years ago that anything would be working for such a wonderful long journey.
The Voyager team is now able to use 4 backup thrusters that haven't been used since 1980.
The transmitters on the Voyager spacecraft are slightly over 20 watts, about what your refrigerator light bulb would give off. So when the signal crosses that vast distance to us, the strength of the signal is 1/10 trillionth of a billionth of a watt, which is the equivalent of 1 divided by 10 with 21 zeros after it.
You can find a scientific paper that says practically anything. That's what we have.
When we look up, we see moons, planets, asteroids, pulsars, star clusters, nebulae, stars as big as whole solar systems, and millions of galaxies. You know what we don't see? Black holes. Because no one has ever seen a black hole.
Oh, come on!
I think all our society is run by insane people for insane objectives.
And we have the lowest employment and the best employment numbers that we've ever had. There are more people.
As you know, I like to use the truth in the movies to explain the truth in the world that we can find. Unfortunately, some truth can only be found through your own diligent searching for knowledge. I try to use what the Bible said about the stars, moon, and sun being a sign unto us, and I figured that's a sign of knowledge. But I have to watch these things progress over time. So I'm going to put a little montage together for you to demonstrate that information. This here sliver of moon is what I captured 2 days prior to the 2017 August total eclipse. From my vantage point, when it reached totality, it was about right here in the tree where this arrow is. Now, right here when this photo was taken, it was in the fork of this tree. And if you were looking at it with your naked eye, it would appear like this. So I took the picture right here, and where my location is here in Colorado, totality of 92 or 95%. Didn't get no, weird shadows appeared at that time, but you could see stars in the sky at that time. It was so dark. Anyhow, this picture right here, the arrow, that was where this moon was 2 days before. This is a branch way up above. So my point in showing you this is, if the moon only moves 5 degrees above and below the ecliptic of the sun, there's no way it could drop all the way down here and be the cause of this eclipse. But that's common sense. And that's only done by you searching yourself. Like I had to take these pictures with a background of this tree in order to capture that information. I have a video here that I'll be using, this indoor rainbow. I mean, again, I ask a question, I'll add that little segment. I have another one about the location of our sun. And this one here, if you'd followed me or my Hillbilly channel and seen any of my videos, you know when the eclipse happened the day before, the sunrise was over here. Now this video here in July, I'll add this segment here, but this is all experimentation and knowledge gained from you being in a stationary position over time and documenting these things, much like the ancients have done. So you got to investigate. Learn for yourself, Curveball.
Once more, Curveball, what is providing the mirror for the rainbow? You see the rainbow, right? Did you see it? I can see it very clearly. This is much better than the mirror. Much cooler effect, really. Again, outside the dome, like the disc. Wake up before you burn up, Curveball. I believe you've seen during the eclipse in August 2017, the sun would rise over here by this little owl on top of the neighbor's fireplace. See how much further north it is here. It is June 27th, 2018. And I believe up until July it'll keep circling even tighter over here, and then it'll start walking back. But hey, no worries, you're on a ball. The ball is tilting, but it's further away from the heat in the summertime than in the winter. But it's all true. They can measure it. If it's a ball, this is impossible. You shouldn't be able to see this. This directly contradicts the programming that you're taught in school, the very description of the phases of the moon. They claim it's the shadow. It's always half lit, but because of its angle. And if you look at the cartoon images, all the angles for anything past a half of a moon up to a full moon occurs in the night part of the Earth ball, not in the daylight. Impossible. Wake up before you...
Well, for the first time ever, a space rover has landed on the far side of the moon. Now, we have China's space program to thank for this accomplishment. The rover's already sent back a picture of a small crater. Now, it's called the far side of the moon because the way gravity works, we only ever see the same side of the moon. China wants to create a biosphere on the other side. And according to the BBC, they brought plants like cotton and potatoes, some yeast, and a fruit fly with them to see what they can do. NASA's New Horizons probe just sent back this picture of a snowman that our solar system built. Yeah, it's two icy spheres sitting just beyond Pluto that scientists are calling Ultima Thule.
You can't make this shit up, Curveball. Wake up before you burn up. You're programmed with this fake NASA space shit month after month, year after year. Now they've got you believing the Chinese shit. Yeah, it looks real to me. And then how gravity works explains why you only see one side of the moon. It's so retarded. But you're oblivious to these facts. You've been indoctrinated by pseudoscience. Wake up. Okay, many of you may not have heard about this fella here, Philip K. Dick. He is a science fiction writer. He wrote these short stories called Electric Dreams. And Amazon has made it into a series. Season 1, Episode 6 is a must-watch for exactly what's going on in our society today since the so-called fake 9/11 terrorist attacks. I believe this fella died in the early 80s or late 70s, but right now the scientific establishment talks about simulation theory. He is the one that coined that phrase in the 1970s. There's video of him making the rounds on the internet talking about simulation theory. I don't know how he ever described his thought process for his short stories and how he developed these ideas. He kind of alluded like he was seeing the future. But very interesting stuff. Fantasy becomes reality. But you get a chance, check this episode out. It's very illuminating. In keeping with the idea of truth in the movies, lies in the news, this movie, The Core, the man here that's about to speak says, "I know I'm not the expert here." And then he's going to ask a question about the core of the earth and how thick it is. And then the man tells you some truth about science. He says all science is best guess. Then later on in the movie, they'll drop some of their science fiction as it's science fact. You'll hear the lead actor state something along the line, "Oh look, from our physics we understand," and then they expound on what he tells everyone is fact, that we all regurgitated in school, but that's the lie. That's why you understand William Shatner said a long time ago, science is science fiction. He was in on it from the 60s, you know, with the black holes and the universes and all that they were brainwashing the population with.
What if the core is thicker or thinner? I mean, it's not ubiquitous. Isn't that going to affect the way the explosions are? Yes. What if the core is made of cheese? It's all best guess, Commander. That's all science is. Best guess.
Let me explain why. Wrapped around the Earth is an invisible field of energy. It's made up of electricity and magnetism, so it's called, creatively enough, the electromagnetic field. It's where we get our magnetic North Pole and South Pole. It protects us from cosmic radiation. So this EM field is our friend.
But now
that field is falling apart.
Why?
Why? skin, that's the Earth's crust. That's what we live on. It's 30 miles thick. The meat here, call it the mantle. Forgetting all the funky transitions, it's like 2,000 miles thick. The core, the peach pit in the center, that's a tricky one. There's two parts, the inner core and the outer core. You following me? The inner core is, it's a big solid chunk of iron, we think. And that's surrounded by the outer core, and that is liquid.
Yes, but most importantly, this liquid is constantly spinning in one direction. So a trillion tons of hot metal spinning at 1,000 miles an hour.
Right, so physics 101, hot metal moving fast makes an electromagnetic.
The Arrival with Charlie Sheen, I would imagine you could call it a modern day version of They Live, only instead of from outer space, from inner space, under the earth, or the demons, or the Satan, his race. Or, as the Bible puts it, vessels for honor and vessels for dishonor. That'd be just a deeper level of the reveal of the truth in the movies. It's kind of funny. More truth in the movies in plain sight. Because you like it hot, don't you, Gordy? Of course them demons and devils like it hot.
Gordy, don't you? Zane, you forced me to ask you what you will be hearing as your own death sentence. Because right now, as much as you think you know, you don't know the half of it. Right now, you're just one little guy with a big conspiracy theory and no proof. And the world is full of them. So, Zane, you take great care in what else you choose to learn.
They're terrible factories, aren't they? You're pumping out greenhouse gas.
Now you're dead.
You're changing the air, temperature, and the whole ecosystem.
You're just finishing what you started. What would have taken you 100 years will do in 10. Just speeding along your own demise.
Like you spit cowbell off. And along a green, right?
In fact, truth is reversed and shown in the fake space movies. They pump out to indoctrinate and train you how to think about the same news facts they have told you in these fake space movies, alien movies, all the time, showing you truth and telling you half-truths about bouncing signals off inversion layers. Look at the very close stars. Remember, Charlie said the star was 14-something light years away. To confirm this idea, I want you to see this next part. Charlie has hooked up home satellite dishes all over the city to make a large array. In this segment, you will see the computer screen. All the arrayed dishes come to a sharp, close triangulation location angle. The 14 light year star once again shown truth in plain sight, very close.
Just another short segment here of more truth in the movies. NASA fakes everything. Wake up, curveball.
Phil Gordy at JPL. While they wouldn't quite, well, the indication was just say it. He said you were faking signals in order to keep your job.
I do believe this permit's expired, Zeminski.
Well, truth in plain sight, curveball.